So the next step is to write the proposal. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the model outline responses to the questions. So the first thing we need to do is to obviously get the questions. So in this case, the form is still available and I'll be using it, and we will grab the questions, and this is and now these can be very long. You could grab the whole thing. The reality is that getting the LLM to answer, the total amount you want funded does not make any sense at this point. So I'm still going to grab the whole thing, copy it, grab an empty doc. I'm going to call these questions. I'm going to dump it in there. Again, the model can read through the noise, so don't worry about it. You can, to avoid too much context, you can get rid of the things that don't make sense here. I'll leave this here. This is not the project title and website. That doesn't, now the executive summary could be useful, though we'll have a separate task in doing that. Again, we're not going to try and do this one single shot to get it to answer the whole thing. We don't want to be wasting time on this contact information. And all of this is there. So the rest is more content about the project, like path to scale, how are you going to measure impact, as well as we made sure to keep these comments, which are going to be important. So there, I've got my questions, and let's go back to our technique. So similar to the first part, we created a prompt that has an instruction. It has delimiters for context. So this is where we will paste questions here, and this is where we'll paste our project's info. I will make these, this document is available. I'll share a link to it so that you can easily just copy paste and reuse this if you want. I'm sure you can do a better job with these prompts once you understand how they work. So my task, you are an expert grant writer. Read in detail the questions and project information in project. You'll be then given a task. Then there's all the context, and then there's the task. Now, you might have noticed that I've not put the task up here. This is because there are actually prompting techniques that have been tested, and in particular, Claude and Anthropic, having it say, here's some info, read it, and then give the task, will actually give a better result, a high quality result. So putting the instruction, in this case at the end, has shown to be more effective. Also, we're going to be dumping quite a lot of information in here, especially if you have a lot of project information. That's okay. Remember I said we can put up to like 200 pages, 300 pages of books, the equivalent of a 200 or 300 page book in there. It might start to forget the detail. And there actually was a study that was done. There's a few of them now that are out there. This looks complicated. I'll brief you. I'll make it very simple. So what this is, pressure testing, is the idea. Let's push to see how much this model, in this case, they tested GPT-4 with 128K, so 128,000 tokens. It was 120. And what they did is, so they had a needle in the haystack. So they got some information like, what was the question they asked it, to try and find something in this document. So the instruction was simple. It's like, what's my favorite color? And they dumped a whole bunch of text, and in there somewhere it said my favorite color is blue. And then they try to make sure to see if it actually could answer the question. So it's needle in the haystack, which means how attentive can it be to the content that you're providing when you're providing it a lot of content. So what it showed that, this is 10,000 tokens. So, 3/4 of this is words. So, 7,500 words, any depth, wherever they hid the needle, wherever they hid the fact, it could find it, all green. It's only when they started hitting the 100,000s of 75,000 words, again, that's like a lot, that they started to see failure in its ability to retrieve the information. So what this is saying to me is if I stay under about 55,000 words, or in this more like 30,000 words, then we're likely for it to be attentive to the information that's being provided. So that little fun fact on what kind of testing has been happening. So you're pretty safe keeping and I doubt you're going to dump 200 pages worth of content for a grant proposal. I'd always recommend breaking that out, and we'll look at that later with the questions, is we want to be able to refine each question. Anyway, we're going to do a first pass with everything. There's not that many questions. So once again, we need to build our project info. This is important. Take the time to do this. Don't be lazy. AI is not here to make you lazy. AI is here to help you be better. So we're going to build a project information in a new doc. Obviously, over time, you're going to be building, and you probably already have your stash as a writer of great information about your organization, but this is where you want to build a single shot document of all the relevant information for the answering of the questions. In this case, I'm going to take those same two articles. Again, I'm doing Control A. Again, maybe clean this up a little bit. And I'm going to put here project info. And again, don't worry about the font. Don't worry about the fact that it got some of the header. All of that's irrelevant unstructured information. And a bit of noise hasn't hurt anyone. Which one did I paste now? The reshaping one. So what have we got here? The unhiding. Again, I'm going to dump that at the end of my my project document. And I could put a whole bunch more information. In my case, I could dump information about the approach. So again, this could be in different files. I'm going to take all of this. This is about the company, which could be relevant, and then I'm going to paste it in the beginning. It doesn't matter, I can paste it at the end or the beginning. And it's got my photo, it's relevant. So now we've got company information, we've got project information. Again, images get ignored in this case, but when I paste it in text, when I paste it into GPT. So that's all the project information that, and again, I'm just doing this because I'll probably use it later for future grant, for example. So we've got a bunch of information here. So this is great, but we should probably guide it a little bit. So what I'm actually going to do in the top of this is write some extra important information, and it will read this information as part of the context. I want to position this project within that. So I might say, Wash AI, maybe I'm going to apply, I'm not going to apply for the whole thing. So maybe I'm going to say, the project I want to fund with the grant funding is, and again, I could switch on voice to text here and just talk about what I want it to be funded. And it could be messed up, broken English, not the end of the world. Just explain what you want to do and what you want to get funded as part of this. So in this case, let's say I want to focus on sanitation. Let's say I want to build a knowledge bot on sanitation using or powered by Wash AI. That's an example. This isn't the case, but let's say I did that. That is the only thing I want funded with agency funding. So I'm kind of like overemphasizing this because there's a lot of noise in this text and I don't want it to start building funding towards other aspects of it. So I'm kind of putting that statement again as amongst the context. I'm hoping it'll pick it up. If not, I might have to refine part of this prompt and this context information so that it does a good job. So that is my project info. This is all the questions. And now I can go back to my prompt. I'm going to select the whole thing, copy. I'm going to go to GPT. I'm going to hit paste. And now I'm going to replace that questions. Again, Control A, Control C. Dumping it in questions here. Did I get it? Yep. And then my project. This is my project doc. Again, could be 100 pages long. I'm going to take it and then I'm going to dump it in there. So now this is very long, doesn't matter. You can also attach files if you have some of these as PDFs or as Word docs. GPT is able to read it and you can label them that way and then refer to the file name here instead of just dumping it in here. That's another way to do it so it doesn't get very noisy in the box here. So as you notice now, the task is at the end and the initial task is to read it. The main task is to answer it here. Let's give it a shot. Now, before I hit there, I'm just going to Control A and Control. I'm going to copy this because I'm going to again do Anthropic, the other model, have it do this task as well. And what you'll notice is that I'm going to be setting up a new I'm not doing it after this. I don't want it to remember the context at this stage. It's not something we want to do at this stage. We can use this information that we did in a previous step, which was about aligning it, later on to refine our answers. So for now, I'm going to set up a new one, and I'm going to paste. Let's go back to GPT. So it grabbed, these are all the sections of the questions. It kind of summarized the questions as these like headers here. These are actually all the questions. And so let's have a look at the bullet points and what it's advising. So what you notice, it did grab that request that I had put in addition to all of the things that I pasted the knowledge bottom sanitation per PowerShell. It gave me the main things that I want to be answering for all of this. Let's see the description of the problem theory of change. This could be quite... That is true, that was in the article. So we've got some great starter points for each of my questions in here. So let's check Claude. A bit shorter. So giving some general guidance, but not really answering, kind of giving me, I would like more detailed bullet points for each of these questions, because now I'm still trying to do a lot of the writing myself. So what we'll be doing next is what I tend to do is I'll grab a new document, and I literally call this my kind of like scrapbook answers, because I will be using some of these. So I prefer GPT. I'm going to ignore Anthropic's answer right now. I'm going to literally copy this and put it in my scrapbook as a guide, just to keep me on point on some of these bullet points here can help me. And then what I've noticed is I'm going to probably go on to each question and apply the same thing. Instead of trying to answer all of these questions, which are too generalized bullet points, there's some good wording, but not enough to get me the kind of text that I'm looking for. So what I'll do, we'll take this one, describe the problem theory of change and specific solution. That's what it gave me as an outline. What I'm going to do now is I am going to start a new chat. I don't want it to take in the context of all of that at this point, because it's going to be distracting in some ways for the model. Instead, what I want it to do is I want to answer a question, but I do want it to know the context, as in the other questions that have been asked. So I'll actually use the original question. Let's go with the problem statement. Describe the problem you're looking for, the theory of change. So I'm going to use just this one question. And I'm going to answer this question using the context. Act as a grant writer. Again, answer this question using the context. And knowing the other questions to be answered to avoid you answering those other questions. Again, really not well written, but my point is, what we're trying to say is answer the single question using the context. The context that I'll give it is, again, the whole information about WashAI, what it can do. And then I wanted to answer it, but knowing the other questions to be answered to avoid you answering those other questions too. We don't want it. Essentially what happens often in grant writing is you want to avoid too much repetition within the answers, because there is a question that covers ethics, or there is a question around monitoring. So don't try and answer that question, just stick to the main question. So the question is describe what you want to take on that. And then the context I'm going to use delimiters in this case because there's a lot of context. Includes the call and the other questions. The call, project, and there again. So I am going to grab the original call, copy it. I'm going to paste the call in here. I'm going to paste, what else did I say I was going to put in there? The project information, which I have a doc for now. Copy, paste. Oh, that didn't copy. Copy, paste, and I'm also going to put the scrapbook in here, which is basically the other questions, so that it understands the context of the other questions and it doesn't answer it. So let's go back to our instruction. As a grant writer, answer the question. Here's the question. Using context and knowing the other questions to be answered. Knowing the other questions to be answered to avoid you answering those questions too. I'm also saying knowing the call for proposal details to avoid the there. So we're focusing now at one question at a time. This prompt I could reuse. I could probably refine this as well as specific to this question, which is the problem you're looking to tackle, theory of change and specific solution. We might want to also refine what we've dumped into the project. But let's just go with this just to show you again how to use injected information. I'm going to, again, grab this whole prompt like that. And I'm going to, again, get Anthropic to do the same task. And let's compare notes. So as you can see here, it really broke out the answer to this question in a much more detailed way. There were three parts to the question, which was the problem, the theory of change, and the specific solution. It kind of used everything that I gave it to answer this question, which is okay, but it kind of missed out the point around the specific question. It did say that, but the solution, so the sanitation knowledge bot, right? And the solution that it's providing here is the whole solution, which again is not great. So what we want to do, this is where we can now keep the history. So I'm not going to open up a new window. We're going to keep this history and have it refine my answer to this question. And so what you might want to say is stay focused on answering the question using the same sections you have, but focus on the specific nature, the specific solution, which is a sanitation knowledge, but not the full implementation of WashAI as a platform, just a bot powered by WashAI. And so it's going to hopefully now, it is aware these models are trained with chat as history, which means that the information that is behind it that we've used is part of its context. That big context window I talked about, 128,000 characters, 1,000 tokens, is going to be part of that information, which is when I write this, it knows that I'm talking to the previous things, which you've probably experienced when you play with it. So it kept the main sections, which was important, and it started refining a little bit the language. Now, I don't have anything that speaks to the gap in knowledge of sanitation, it made it up. What I'm realizing this is like, okay, I mean, there is a gap, but what I'm going to start doing now is realizing, okay, well, I probably should have put in some information about sanitation or the knowledge gap in sanitation, do some research about that, and then put that into this project info file here, literally call it knowledge gap in sanitation, do your research, paste in the articles that you've read, the papers, the publications in there as part of your project info. And then what we'll do in this case is I will actually go back to my original prompt, my very first prompt about this single question, and my context now. So I will reuse this and I will dump in now the project information that was missing some of that sanitation info. Ideally, you do that in the first round, but again, I'm rushing through here to give you an idea of what you can do, but it also pointing out how it can choose to make things up, such as the information gap. I mean, it's very general. It's not very strong arguments. So this is something you want to improve as a problem statement. It did actually refine now the sanitation knowledge bot. Again, using the same capabilities of Wash AI, but then applying it with the language around sanitation. And here we go. So what I tried to illustrate here is the ability and the importance to focus on one question at a time for your application and injecting the right information so that you can have stronger responses, high quality responses. You can only take what it knows. If it doesn't know much, it'll make it sound good, but any person who's looking at your grant will just read this as fluff. So let's avoid the fluff and build this context information that you will be giving the model to be able to give you an answer that is well articulated using strong arguments and real facts that you have done your research on. So it won't take you away from doing the research, but it can help you consolidate that research into information that makes your application stronger. So again, we can go back to this original prompt and do this for each of the questions that require a bunch of writing and refine this project file that you have so that you can have high quality responses.